I'm really pleased to say that a lot of our musicians have been doing really well. Just this last year, we've got 7 folk who got into major symphony orchestras in the States. We're enjoying watching the results.
I really like this program. The best thing about this program is that mock audition.
The difficulty is that you have to sound good playing alone an orchestral part because, in the section you play it with 20 other people, and it's much easier.
I decided to go back home and pursue a marketing degree for a couple of years. Went to University of Texas at El Paso and pursued a marketing degree for a couple of years, and then that was just so much worse, man. Music is where it's at.
I think you have to try and have as much honest perspective with yourself as you possibly can. Like there's a level where you are crashing and burning. Okay, so what do you do?
We are exploring auditioning and preparing for auditions using mock auditions. I love this multifaceted episode that we've got in store for you here today. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we are on location today with the San Francisco Academy Orchestra, which is led by Andrei Gorbatenko. He had the idea for me to come in and be a fly on the wall for one of their monthly mock auditions. I did that in December and went to their after party and just soaked in the whole program, and you're going to experience that, and I know you're going to be so inspired hearing what they're up to there, and you're going to have some great takeaways about preparing yourself for auditions or any sort of pressure situation. You heard from several folks in that intro. You heard from Andrei Gorbatenko, the program founder, as well as David Chernyavsky, the violin faculty for the San Francisco Academy, current Academy bass students, Chen Liu and Michael Miner. And we'll also include a clip from my previous interview with San Francisco Symphony bassist and Academy bass teacher Charles Chandler about the program and his experiences working there. And we will start off today with Joy Fellows, who plays viola in the San Francisco Opera and Ballet, and she also teaches viola through the Academy and runs the San Francisco Academy's mock audition program. I sat down with her at the Drew School, where we have the Golden Gate Bass Camp, in the control room, and we dug into auditioning in general. You're going to hear about Don Green, who we just had on the podcast for round 2, and many other topics. Quick shout out to our sponsors: Steve Swan String Bass, D'Addario Strings, Bass Violin Shop, A440 and Upton Bass. More on them later in the episode, but let's dig into this first part with Joy Fellows, and you'll be hearing some music in between from the San Francisco Academy Orchestra. Fabulous group. Here we go. Who are you and what do you do? Why don't we start with that, and then we can talk about the Academy.
Sure. My name is Joy Fellows, and I play the viola. I am a member of the San Francisco Opera and the San Francisco Ballet, and I also teach through the Academy and run the mock auditions here as well. So I keep myself fairly busy.
And you were in New World Symphony earlier in life?
Yeah. I after my master's, I went to New World and spent a couple years there. And then from there, I got a job in St. Louis. And then I moved on to Indianapolis after that. And my now husband, is a violinist in the symphony. And so obviously I wanted to live in the same city as him. And it worked out very fortunately.
Said goodbye to the snow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so along the way, obviously, lots of audition experience and training. And I just got asked, because you did New World, was Don Green involved?
He was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don, the very first podcast Don ever appeared on was my podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was it really?
So I'm a huge Don Green fan. I feel like I learned so much from those experiences with Don.
Yeah. I loved doing sessions with him too, because he would come down to New World, and we would have mock auditions there, and we'd do what we called adversity training, which was, we'd go for, run up a couple of flights of stairs or something to get your heart rate up, and then pop out on stage and play Don Juan, or what,
Yeah,
whatever it was.
I found that so compelling. When my wife actually discovered, I think Performance Success was the book. I think Don's written at least 3 books.
Yeah.
But the one that was like kind of like a real manual of auditioning, I think Performance Success is what it was called.
That sounds right.
But it was so interesting. Like, run up and down the stairs, go do all sorts of things to put yourself in a state of activation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then using centering techniques to pull yourself, or however we want to phrase it, into that, ready to go.
Yeah, just so that and it's not exactly the same as being in the moment and having nerves, but your heart is elevated, so that sort of simulates, sort of the body feel of it. Of course, your head is a different matter, but that was, I found that really helpful. And then, also we'd every now and then, whoever was on the panel would bang cups around or drop pencils or, make a little bit of a kerfuffle behind the screen just to, because that stuff happens. At the opera, we've had people, pop into the audition room accidentally. We've had fire alarms go off. Things happen, and you have to be able to move on. Not live in the past about it.
Yeah. But what a challenge! And the stakes are so high for.
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, it's not life or death, though it might feel like it's life or death.
Sure.
And our adversity training, which I just love. I've done a little bit of that with my own students. Is that something that happens for the Academy? Do you do anything like that in these mocks?
We haven't really done any of that, just because partly, it's the excerpts are hard, and a lot of the students that are coming through Academy haven't necessarily had a lot of practice, playing the excerpts, and so I'm more trying to get them in a place where they feel comfortable performing them, and then maybe when they play for friends or something like that, they could do some more adversity training. But
so their hearts racing and they're getting ready to play Don Juan, or I'm a bass player getting ready to play Heldenleben or what have you, right?
Beethoven
9, all the excerpts. So what are some of those techniques, tactics, thoughts, mindsets that you've explored in this kind of a setting with people? Like how do you help people control their nerves and their activation level in audition?
Well, I mean,
or mock audition.
Yeah, I mean, certainly everybody is deals with the stress of an audition in a different way, and there isn't like one magic bullet, for everybody. Everybody's going to deal with it kind of differently. Sometimes, it's just a matter of of being poised and just being able to center yourself, and or having a banana that day, or taking some Enderall, or regulating your caffeine levels that day. It's all a balance, and everybody's slightly different, and and part of the big battle of figuring out what you really have to deal with is playing mock auditions, is basically practicing the audition. And so that's what I hope to help people figure out is, what happens to them in the moment, and to be able to basically practice an audition so that they know what's going to happen to them physically and mentally in the moment,
I put together a few years ago, I talked to, it occurred to me doing these podcasts that I was talking to a lot of people that won auditions, a lot of principal bassists around the world, Don Green, other people, experts on the field. And so I put together a book called Winning the Audition, which is kind of ironic because I've won like diddly squat in my life, just a couple of things. But I was taking their thoughts and the takeaways in terms of preparation I found really fascinating, and looking at commonalities and differences between preparation, whether for a mock audition or for their successful Boston Symphony audition. What sort of, are there any commonalities you see in terms of preparation mistakes? Like, what do most people forget or not maybe get right?
I think a lot of people and I'm certainly guilty of this myself, is not having practiced the entire list and have every excerpt at the same level. Like, you can maybe there's one that you don't know on the list, and you focus so much on that one, but then you wind up neglecting the others. And so for me, I think it's about sort of time management and planning and being really organized about your preparation and how you're preparing, and being super specific in your preparation for it too.
We were talking about mini disc players.
Yeah.
So like recording has been
dating ourselves.
Right, I know, that's or whatever device you happen to be recording on. Like, how did that play in for you with your audition preparation, or what advice do you give to people in terms of recording themselves? How often? What to record? How does that work?
I mean, for me, I think recording is an essential tool for preparing for auditions. I myself will. When I'm, maybe 3 weeks away or so, I'll be recording myself every few days, and then I take kind of copious notes. And then the next day, I don't necessarily practice the whole excerpt, but I'll practice just those spots that need fixing, or massaging, or it needs more elegance or more articulation or whatever, whatever it is, I really focus just on the issues. And then maybe at the end of my practice session, like I'll also divide the time between the entire list, for instance. So if, sometimes it winds up being 8 minutes per excerpt, and sometimes it's more like 12 minutes per excerpt, but that ensures that I get through the entire list too. And then at the end of maybe a couple of days, then I'll record myself again and then start the whole process over again. And for me, that works really well, because then I feel really confident in my preparation, and it also helps with the nerves too, because at that point, you've put so much thought and sweat into what you're doing, and so you have so much of a plan that you're less distracted,
You mentioned bananas, and to this day I can't eat a banana without thinking about taking an audition. Right. So that's something I would do the day of the audition. And like a
terrible association.
I know, sadly, that's the only food that has been ruined by auditions. Well. But for me at least. But the day of, like let's say you were just going to play one round today, or these people were just about to hear some mock auditions. Yeah. Like, what do you do? Does your preparation differ the day of? Like, are you playing things slowly at tempo, not playing?
Not really. I'll still ideally, a week before, I'm performing the whole list for different people, for my husband, for, family, whoever, friends, just so that I'm practicing performing. It's like, if you have a big recital somewhere, you're not going to just have that one recital. You're going to have a warm-up recital, somewhere that's kind of a more safe environment. And I think that's kind of what a mock audition is in a sense. It's a safer environment, because, a job's not on the line here,
right.
But
right.
So.
Well, and thinking about copious notes, you mentioned. So I was a few years ago on an Elgin Symphony audition panel, listening to all these people taking notes, and I remember reading back on my notes and being like, "I'm a jerk!" Like everything I was writing, and I've thought a lot about like what, and then people. I should have thought that people would have asked me to do this, but then people said, "Hey, can you share some notes?" And I was sharing these jerky, or what seemed to me like very terse notes, and I've sort of thought about providing helpful feedback to people in a situation like this. Like what thoughts do you have on that, or what do you advise people?
Well, it's certainly hard to, as a note taker in the moment, to be nice, because you are listening highly critically, and you're writing down what's not working. And so, sometimes there are times when I will write something and it looks really harsh, and then, I'll add to it or something, but whatever it is, as long as it's constructive and truthful, then I think it's useful.
Thinking back on so many auditions I've taken, but let's say I'm playing Beethoven 5 and it starts to go off the rails. Yeah. And that's it for me. I'm crushed. The nerves start to ramp up.
Yeah.
Things get worse and worse. I think a lot of us have found ourselves in that sort of horrible spiral.
Sure.
Thoughts, personal experiences, or what you've seen or what you advise on recovering from what might not be a big mistake at all, but what have you found that works for you or others?
In a moment like that too, it's hard to have perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think you have to try and have as much honest perspective with yourself as you possibly can. Like there's a level where you are crashing and burning. Okay, so what do? You should stop and start over. Have a moment and repoise yourself and then start again. And it'll probably be better the second time, But there are things. No performance is going to be perfect. It's as long as you. If it's everything that you've worked to do and you feel good about it, then you're probably doing well. Even if like one little thing goes kind of haywire, you're not going to lose an audition over, missing that one note in that one run. I'm trying to remember who this line is from. It's from some article I read probably 20 years ago, but talking about taking auditions and how it made this individual feel. When you play an audition, you feel differently about your performance, but if you actually listen to a recording of you playing any given day and that audition, they're probably not that too different. That sort of nerves makes you feel differently about your playing level. Sure.
But have you found that to be the case? Or
Yeah, I mean, you are certainly hypersensitive when you're performing, but ideally you've come to a place where your worst and your best aren't far from each other. Like you've done that much work so that the pendulum isn't going to swing very far.
Yeah, I like that pendulum. David Allen Moore, one of the Los Angeles Philharmonic bass players, he talks about your floor and your ceiling and trying to get your floor and your ceiling as close to each other.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Cool. That's great. Well, I can't wait to see these mock auditions.
Yeah,
and
it'll be fun.
Yeah, thanks for chatting.
Yeah, absolutely.
This episode is brought to you by Steve Swan String Bass, and I've always been impressed by how Steve manages to get basses sounding so vibrant, whether it's a student-level bass or a top-of-the-line professional bass. Here's Steve on some of what he has learned in terms of setup.
When steel strings came into general use around 1959, the German bass makers flipped out, and they really got scared that they're going to get big shiploads of basses back that got wrecked by these high-tension steel strings. And so they did three things that really changed the function of the instrument. They shortened the string length, and they lowered the neck angle so the bridges weren't that tall anymore. And then they made the tops a lot thicker. They really wanted to ensure that these basses were not going to come back across the ocean for work anymore. And so the basses tend to sound kind of nasal, and they didn't have any depth. They didn't have a chest voice at all. And so what we do with increasing the neck angle, and we can also increase the overstands for modern playing, can get up into thumb position a lot easier. So a neck reset can accomplish that. Sometimes we'll transplant a neck or make a new neck for these basses that might have a string length that are not friendly to modern playing.
Learn more about what Steve can do to get your bass playing better, and check out his great selection of basses at steveswanstringbass.com. And thanks for sponsoring the podcast, Steve. This episode is brought to you by D'Addario Strings. Our friends at D'Addario want to help listeners change their strings safely and efficiently, and they have a few tricks to help you achieve that. What happens if strings aren't quite the right size for your instrument? For instance, if you play a 5/8 bass, when strings are slightly too large for an instrument, the tension will be lower. And when strings are slightly too high for an instrument, the tension will be higher. Learn more at orchestral.daddario.com. And thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. I finished up my conversation with Joy and headed down to check out the whole mock audition process in action. So the Drew School in San Francisco, where this is taking place, beautiful facility. Their main hall is where the actual mock audition took place, and they had a screen set up, and so people came on. You couldn't see them at all. This is a very standard setup, right? And they warmed up downstairs. There are a whole bunch of rooms downstairs, so people went down. They were divided into an A group and a B group. So the A group was either warming up or playing, while the B group was taking notes throughout, comments for the people playing. They had a predetermined order of excerpts. Joy asked for each new excerpt. And it was great to be both on the committee side of the screen, the quote-unquote committee for this mock audition, and to be on the player side of the screen and just sort of see how people handle pre-excerpt routines, what they do, if anything special. Some people were reading off of sheet music. Some people were using iPad Pros, which is what I'm using. And it was just a really cool experience to take it all in. I took a bunch of photos of the whole mock audition from both sides of the screen and the after party, which you're going to get into in a second. And you can check that all out on my Instagram page. That's all linked up to in the show notes. So these mock auditions are a big part of the Academy experience, but there's much more to it than that. And we move on now to the after party. This was the December mock audition. Andrei invited me for one of them in the fall, but he said, hey, if you come to the December one, there's the party. And I love a good party. And it was a great party. Photos of that too, and in my Instagram feed. So we're going to go now to Andrei Gorbatenko, who is the music director for the Academy. And we learn a little bit about the Academy and just all that it offers and what's been going on these last few years there. The man behind it all, Andrei. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, having a great time.
I'm having a great time too, taking this all in today, seeing the mock audition, and we're here at the holiday party, which is just great. So I'm really digging, learning more about the Academy Orchestra and just the program, what you've built. Can you just give a quick synopsis of what this is that I saw today in this program that you've been so heavily involved with?
Yeah, well, for the last 20 years, it's been a program that gave young professional musicians the opportunity to work alongside members of the San Francisco Symphony. And then 6 years ago, Don Ehrlich and I were having lunch, and we were kind of complaining about how much tuition costs at schools, especially private schools, music schools. And we decided what we really wanted to do is create a program that would be efficient and not necessarily a program that needs to own a building or anything, that would really more so serve as a distraction for helping young artists meet their career goals. So we came up with the Artist Diploma program, and we have our weekly excerpt classes, we have our private instructions, we have mock auditions, of course, and then our longstanding tradition of giving young professional musicians that opportunity to perform alongside members of the San Francisco Symphony. And so we're in our 6th year of that right now, and I'm really pleased to say that a lot of our musicians have been doing really well. Just this last year, we've got 7 folk who got into major symphony orchestras in the States, and they're all getting into regionals, and I'm enjoying it very much, and the fruits of all our labor. And the faculty, they're outstanding, and the fellows, they're so enthused, and we're really appreciating it, and we're enjoying watching the result.
Yeah, and the results speak for themselves. It's really cool to see all these people moving on and finding success on the audition circuit. And this program has joined the ranks of other groups like the Civic Orchestra of Chicago, New World Symphony, other groups that are trying to be the next step for people in their career. So I just think it's super cool that this is happening here in San Francisco. So thanks for building this. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. Thanks for being here and your interest in the program, and for sharing this on your blog. This is an honor to have you here.
Well, so you do a lot of traveling too, especially coming up here the winter, spring, and you're going around and letting people know about this program and even auditioning people. Is that right? Tell me about what the next few months look like for you in terms of your activities on the road.
Well, between January and March, I basically visit all the major schools. So the hotspots are, of course, Boston, New York, the greater DC area, LA, and so I'm definitely in those places. But I do visit the schools in the major metropolitan areas of, again, like Boston, New York, LA, Chicago, Yeah, and so I do a variety of things when I go to those schools, depending on what the school wants. Sometimes I'll come to an excerpt class and I'll maybe make a presentation about Academy. Maybe in one case, recently, I was at the North Carolina School of the Arts. I conducted the orchestra and I spoke to the orchestra about the program. It's still a bit different at every school. Sometimes I just sit down with the dean and chat with him or her about the program.
And fellow bass player and conductor. Yeah. How'd you get into conducting? I just gotta ask.
You know, it was actually by accident. I was in the youth orchestra in the 90s, and we would get together between 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock before the SF Symphony show would start. And the youth orchestra, I think, ended around 5 o'clock. And we kind of had not that much to do, so we'd get together in chamber groups and hang out in the green room and play. And then next thing you knew, it got larger and larger and larger, and we had an ensemble so large in the green room we could barely fit. And then it suddenly needed a conductor, and we started pulling repertoire from the youth orchestra library and playing it. And next thing you know, some of the SF Symphony members in the 90s would come in to the green room and start coaching and watching what we were doing. And next thing you know, we had this concept of having them not only be coached by members of the San Francisco Symphony, but performing alongside them. And then we ended up with our first concert in December of 1999. I remember we did the Saint-Saëns Cello Concerto and Beethoven 1. So we're going to have a 20th anniversary next year.
Wow, what a great 20 years, and then this new chapter with the Academy program and the artist diploma. I think it's really cool to see and chat with all these great young players, and they're off to fascinating careers in all sorts of different areas of the music world. So thanks for what you do, and it's really cool what you got going on here in San Francisco. Also at the holiday party was San Francisco Symphony violinist David Chernyavsky, who is one of the coaches and one of the teachers for the Academy program. Here's David on the Academy and on auditioning in general.
My name is David Chernyavsky. I'm a violinist. I play at the San Francisco Symphony in the second violins. I'm originally from Russia, obviously. You know, I went to school in this country. I lived here for 20 years.
And you've been involved with the Academy program for how long?
About 10 years. I moved to Bay Area in 2009, and soon after I was introduced to Andrei, and first few years it was just the orchestra, so I would play with the orchestra, and then he started the artist diploma program and naturally asked me to participate.
And you're working with the violinists on a weekly basis, weekly lessons and studio class, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I teach weekly lessons, private lessons, mostly concentrated on the audition preparation, excerpts, you know, concertos, exposition of Mozart, romantic concerto, whatever is needed for auditions to get them ready for real-life auditions. Because, surprisingly enough, when you come out of school, you're, as a string player, in regular school, the orchestral excerpt training is really not a priority.
Is that the way it is just in the United States, or is that true in Russia or other places as well? What's your experience been with that?
It's true, I think, everywhere, but in the United States, the requirements to get a job in, you know, last 20, 30, I don't know how many years, it's shifted towards playing the orchestral excerpts rather than solo repertoire. Because before it was more like you would play a concerto and then maybe would be asked to sight read something. And now the focus is on the orchestral parts. The solo part that, you know, you get to play during the audition is less important. Everybody is listening out for the how do you play the excerpts. So that's why when you come out of school, where you mostly studied your concertos, sonatas, chamber music, which is great and absolutely necessary, but you feel unprepared for the, you know, auditions.
When I think violin excerpts, one that immediately comes to mind is Don Juan as something that's just got so many pitfalls. It shows a lot about the player.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Probably nobody's favorite excerpt to play. Maybe some people, but what are you listening for when you hear someone play Don Juan? What are some of the common mistakes people make, or what advice might you have for that excerpt? We could talk for 10 hours about excerpts, but let's just take that one.
Okay, so about Don Juan, the main thing about the excerpts is that it's an orchestral part, so you have to keep in mind that on one hand, you have to play it as if you are in the section, which means that you cannot play too virtuosic. You have to play rhythmical, otherwise in a section it's never gonna work if you do rubatas that are not written in and stuff like that. If you rush, it's a big no-no. So one thing is to hold yourself and not play too virtuosic, too soloistic-like. On the other hand, the difficulty is that you have to sound good playing alone an orchestral part because, in the section you play it with 20 other people and it's much easier because you can hide behind somebody else. So main objective is not to rush, have a very strong sense of rhythm and tempo.
Let's take one more example. I heard today, I was listening to the mock auditions today, listening to Mozart concertos.
Yeah.
Okay, so what advice might you have for somebody preparing their Mozart concerto for an audition? Mozart 5 or whatever concerto they might be playing. What are people listening for? What are some pitfalls that they might be falling into? What are you listening for?
So about Mozart concertos for violin for the auditions, what I like to say to my students is imagine singing it, or imagine a soprano singer singing this music. A lot of students or a lot of people try to play Mozart short and kind of making a lot of accents kind of on a dry side. I think it's a mistake. I think it sounds a lot more appealing and just better if you try to sing everything. It's a little bit counterintuitive because there's a lot of articulation in the music, but it sounds a lot better if you try to sing it out, everything including the fast passages and melodies. So that my general advice is to sing everything, even the fast notes.
Well, David, thank you for chatting with me. Really cool program here, and great to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we turn to double bass faculty member Charles Chandler, who came to the holiday party, but I missed him. I left, and he had a late night gig. So this is actually a clip from my interview with him a couple of years ago, and we talked about the Academy Orchestra. So here's Charles on his experiences working with these students and how auditioning helps your progress in general.
It's mostly graduate students,
okay.
and it's a program that costs a lot less than going to a conservatory. It costs really a fraction of San Francisco Conservatory. You have an experience of playing in an orchestra. It's not that many sets per year. I think it's about 4 or 5 orchestral sets. But most importantly, you take lessons from actually all of the teachers are members of San Francisco Symphony there. So you get to work with them on a one-by-one basis and also work in a class setting too as well. There's an orchestra class that you do. And it's great. It's really great. I only have 2 students there, but I really enjoy it. It's really they've all been fantastic players, students, and I feel like I've learned a lot from them too, really frankly. So it's been a really good experience.
Well, it's always interesting for me to see, and everybody's different, obviously, but there are some sort of commonalities you can see among maybe it's in these motivated students, whether they're late high school or college or in a program like this, post-college, looking for a job. Are there any things you notice? Like, just as an example, I remember interviewing Lawrence Hurst from Indiana. And
I heard that. Okay. That was a wonderful interview.
Yeah,
yes.
Well, like one thing that stuck out for me is like the average 18-year-old is, I think, 2 years behind in his bow hand, right? And other people say, like, are there any things you notice just on a consistent basis with the students you've worked with over the years? Any commonalities?
Well, one of the things that I would say is there's been a hesitation to take auditions. I've seen in some of them. I mean, I realize when you take an audition, it could be such a big investment in terms of money and time. Obviously, you could be spending thousands and risking the safety of your bass to travel out there. But my attitude towards taking auditions, I really try to encourage them to always do that, because I feel like every audition for them is a win-win situation. It's a total win-win. No matter what the committee says, it is a win-win situation, because just from a teaching perspective, I never have seen them work so hard. Yeah. And they come in and they're really putting the pedal to the metal, and they're reaching out and playing for other instruments, which I totally think is great. Play for trumpets, play for percussion, play for cellists. They wouldn't have done that otherwise if they hadn't been doing this audition. They're recording themselves. They're doing all of these things, and so it's really about the process of entering into that process. And what happens at the audition, it may come through or it may not come through, but it's a total win, because by the end of it, they just wouldn't have progressed and be where they are at it. So I totally encourage people to do it, to just do it. And frankly, there's part of me that feels like it's kind of weird how we enter into orchestra and we never audition again. And boy, that's a tough. I'm really grateful for that. But there is you do look back and you kind of think, wow, I wonder if I ever work with that kind of intensity. You know, that kind of with that where you're, and it does happen though. The chamber playing and playing solos, I think, is a great outlet for that, and also for personal growth and pushing yourself to kind of evolve on your instrument more in a way you wouldn't otherwise.
What is an American style of bass? Here's Gary and Eric from Upton Bass on the topic.
So there's a joke about American instruments. Right? If I can take 4 violins and go to let's say a top-notch violin appraiser, and he can take the first one out and look at it and go, well, this one's clearly Italian because of all these features. Next one, oh, this is French because of all these features. Next one, no, this is English because of these features. 4th violin, they can't tell what it is, and then they go, it's American. It's got a little bit of everything.
Learn more about their Bostonian, American-style model and so many other things that they have to offer you at uptonbass.com. And thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. Whenever anybody's going to the Midwest, and I lived in Chicago, Illinois for years and years, I tell them to go to A440. If they're looking for a bow, if they're looking for a bass, if they need some repairs, then if they have a student who's looking for an instrument, A440 has been serving the community for years and years. They're located just west of Wrigley Field in beautiful Chicago. They do great work, and they've been a big supporter of bass events over the years, whether it's the Chicago Bass Festival or really any bass event. A440, you guys rock. Check them out at a440violinshop.com. This episode is brought to you by the Bass Violin Shop, which opened in 2001 as a small double bass workshop in Greensboro, North Carolina. Today, they're staffed by 3 full-time, highly skilled bass luthiers, and they specialize in double bass sales, rentals, setup, restoration, and repair. For nearly 20 years, they have satisfied thousands of clients by offering quality instruments, knowledgeable service, reliable repairs, and superior restorations at affordable prices. They're always happy to assist basses for trade-in, consignment, or even purchasing outright. Contact them to schedule a time to discuss your bass and your future needs. For more information and current inventory, visit their website at bassviolinshop.com and be sure to follow them on Facebook and Instagram. You heard from Joy Fellows, the audition coordinator. You heard from Andrei Gorbatenko, the founder of the program and the music director. You heard from David and Charles, some of the teachers. But now let's hear from 2 of the Academy students, Both people I consider friends, super cool people, Chen Liu, and then followed by Michael Miner. You'll hear about their backstory. You'll hear about what they think of the Academy program, what they like about San Francisco, and what they've learned during their time at this program.
I'm Chen, and I'm a bass player. I'm subbing in Bay Area.
Playing in all sorts of groups, including the San Francisco Symphony. We were playing together.
Yes, San Francisco Symphony. I played with the Napa Symphony, Napa Opera, and Fresno Symphony, and all those symphony, big and small in Bay Area.
And you went to the San Francisco Conservatory here and studied with Scott Pingle?
I started with Scott Pingle while I was having my master degree at San Francisco Conservatory of Music.
So tell me what you think about San Francisco. What do you like about this city and just being a bassist here?
I love San Francisco so much. The people here are really chill, really happy. And the lifestyle I like here. I like the weather here.
Me too. You're doing the Academy, the San Francisco Academy here. This is your second year, and we just had a mock audition, which you do every month, right?
Yes, we do every month at SF Academy Orchestra, and we have probably 8 times per year. So this is my 8+4, 12. My 12th mock audition.
12th mock audition, okay. And then additionally, you're having lessons through the program with Charles Chandler?
Yeah, I have a lesson with Charles every week. That was my first year. And we also had a studio class, and which me and another bass player, we joined the class. And we play some duets together. We play some chamber music. And for my second year, I only have the studio class. So, we also accept class.
Okay, and then also orchestra rehearsals with the Academy Orchestra?
Yeah, orchestra rehearsals with the Academy Orchestra once a month, probably. And we rehearse 3-4 times, and we have one concert. And there's a lot of San Francisco Symphony Orchestra's member join us as our principal to bring us to play with us.
What do you like about the mock auditions? How do you feel that those have helped you?
Oh, I really like this program. The best thing about this program is that mock audition. I record every time when I mock audition. I record every time how I played. And when I listen back, I seriously feel like I hear the difference from the first mock audition to the 14th one. Each time I got better. Not only the technically, also about how I feel, how I generally react in the mock audition during the high pressure circumstance.
Well, I'm sure it's been a great process for you. You sound great. I heard your mock audition today, and it was really wonderful playing. And it's just been so great getting to know you here in the Bay Area. And it sounds like you're having a great time here in San Francisco and with this program.
Oh yeah. Thank you, Jason.
Michael Miner.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. I heard you play mock audition today. It was great. I was taking photos and following along, and you sound like $1,000,000, man. So really, really great what you're doing, and cool program. This Academy program. Tell me a little about the program.
Well, I'm really enjoying it. I'm getting some tutelage that I've never gotten before. With Charles and stuff like that. He's so open and so warm, and getting to play with the group and stuff like that, it's really inspiring. Having a bass player as a conductor too. I mean, he gives really great feedback with the auditions. Mock auditions are probably my favorite part of the whole thing. It's scary to play in front of peers. They're all ready to win an audition, and you have to play in front of these guys, and it makes you nervous because you want to do well, and that's the best thing.
Well, to do it monthly like that is great because you just builds up. It just becomes like a part of your schedule that way.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's scary. I mean, for me, it's still scary every month. Some people can't make it to the auditions, and some can, and different different pros, come to the auditions just to hear it and stuff like that. Keeps you on your toes. It really makes you practice and it keeps you going, and it's just a great thing, I think.
So how's a guy from El Paso find himself in San Francisco? Take me on that journey.
I've been playing bass in El Paso. You get to play bass early. I was playing bass in like 5th grade, and I'd played bass all the way through high school. And I went to high school for 2 years in El Paso and was an All-State for those years. And that's Texas All-State's like a big thing, And after that, I'd gone to Idlewild Arts Academy for high school, and it was a blast too. And I got to study with Jeremy Kurtz there, and then made my way to Georgia. I went to the Robert McDuffie Center for Strings for 2 years and studied with Kurt Marucki and Rachel Kalin, and they were unbelievable as well. And I had gotten into Aspen, and I was there, and I wasn't really focused super hard on school, and I was just kind of socializing. I was kind of disenchanted with music after a while. I'd been doing it for so long. Been playing in the groups in El Paso for a while too, like the El Paso Symphony, Las Cruces Symphony, and Juarez Symphony across the border, just right across the border there. And I just kind of became disenchanted with it. I'd gone to Aspen, and everybody was so good. I was just kind of in my own head about it, and was like, everyone's good. Like, what am I trying to prove here? And I decided to go back home and pursue a marketing degree for a couple of years. Went to University of Texas at El Paso, and pursued a marketing degree for a couple of years, and then that was just so much worse, man. Music is where it's at, It's just, music is really, it's my life, and I auditioned to a couple schools, and Scott he seemed really interested in having me as a student, and he was actually on his way to Michigan. So a couple of his students had followed him, and I had just accepted it here because they'd given me a pretty substantial scholarship, seeing as all their bass players were leaving, and stayed there for a year and studied with Shinji Yoshima in the opera, who was great, really grounded me, really kind of, told me what could happen, and what possibly couldn't happen. Like, it's a hard world out there, and he was like, hey, it's hard, like, people don't win auditions, people who go through the, and it's very, very true. And then I studied with Scott for 2 years, and he was great too, very technical, like really helped me with a lot of my I had a lot of attention issues coming in, and like was even struggling through some injuries my first couple of years, and he really helped me with that, and really has an understanding of his body and how he plays bass, and the way he plays bass is how I strive to play bass, so it's been great, and that's how I kind of came out here. And now I graduated in May, and I'm out here just freelancing and at the academy, which I'm loving. That's just kind of how it is.
I got to ask, so marketing degree, and so you've got a great website. So you maybe you picked some of that up in the marketing degree. Is there anything you picked up in that time that you were there that you've found useful, even if it was ultimately not maybe what you wanted to do? Were there any skills that you find yourself using?
I know that there's a lot of ways to market yourself as an entity and stuff like that. And like using social media and stuff like that is absolutely a great way to do that. It's something I don't really do personally, but something people do, and that's a great way to do it. I know people who do that and have a big following and get a lot of gigs because they have a big following and they sound great, and like they deserve the gigs. And they get them without having to audition or anything like that, just because they have this Instagram following. They have videos of themselves online so they can hear themselves, like people can hear them play. And stuff like that, that's big. I really think that the biggest thing that kind of taught me is like, it's the same as anything else. Everything's a little political, and trying to be a nice guy and trying to be, or a nice person in general, and trying to be, just being able to hang out and like do the stuff that is kind of expected of you. Like people like that, people want to hire someone who they know that they can go to lunch with and talk, then it's not that it's not that bad. You guys talk, and it's nice, or you go out and you do stuff like that, and that I think is a big deal. That's something that like in the marketing world I realized too. Like that's the people who are getting the gigs in marketing too. We're out there having a good, like really great, at like talking to people. It's hard for people. It's hard for me, So you just got
for sure. Me too. You got a beautiful bass. What are you playing on?
So it's like it was made in like 1820s. It's an Austrian bass. It's a great old bass. It doesn't have a maker or anything. In the 80s, it was redone by Dan Hatches like took it apart and put it back together, put a new neck and a new scroll. Like that's basically a Dan Hatches setup with just an old, an 1820s body. It's a great instrument. I really looked into it. I got it when I was like a sophomore because I was playing with those symphonies in El Paso and I was saving my money and I was able to like pay my parents back for it. And so that's mine. It's my baby. I love it.
It's a beautiful bass, and hey, Dan Hatches setup. Nothing wrong with that. So, well, you sound great, man. It's really great to hear you and see you in this Academy program, and it's really great. We'll do it again sometime soon.
Hopefully. Thanks so much.
There you have it, a look inside the San Francisco Academy Orchestra, their mock audition process, their journey over the past couple of decades to where they are now, the Artist Diploma Program, thoughts and perspectives from the founder, from faculty members, and from students. I really hope you enjoyed this. This is the sort of thing I have so much fun doing, going and doing something live in person and recording it this way, this really kind of three-dimensional way, in my opinion, and bringing out a finished product. I've never done anything like this, but I hope that this is the first of many such projects. So thank you to Andrei for the great idea. Thank you to all the people involved. And thank you to you for taking time to listen to this. I know there is so much you could be doing with your time. I think about that every day as I peruse through Amazon Prime Video and Netflix and Hulu and my bajillion podcasts I subscribe to. So you took the time to listen to this. And for that, I thank you so much. If you ever want to reach out, you can get in touch at feedback@contrabassconversations.com. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to share it with somebody, that's super easy to do. We are everywhere. We're online, contrabassconversations.com. That's our website. And of course, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. We're there. Check us out. Share via whatever method you like. That would be super appreciated. Contrabass Conversations is produced by Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Trevor Jones, and Mitch Mooring. If you're looking for a double bass, Mitch is making beautiful ones down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and you can learn more at mitchmooring.com. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.